Good evening, everybody. Welcome to 2 Minute Warning. This is the high-paced American football podcast in which the time is in short supply, but the opinions are not. We're live once again on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Trovo, the world, and we're here to discuss the 2021 NFL season, all the teams that didn't make it to the Super Bowl, and of course, the Super Bowl this Sunday. My name's Jez. I'm joined by Matt, as is always the case. How's life in Shea Matt this week?
It's been all right. We've had a birthday, so we got a brand new 12-year-old in the house, and it's on the countdown the last couple of days to half term for me. So unfortunately I've become ill today, but I'm here to finish off our NFL season. I couldn't miss this one.
Yes, it is the last kind of 2 minute warning of the 2021 NFL season, as it were. So we're not done. We're going to be doing some of the spring leagues, the Indoor Football League and the USFL, and plenty more football to come, excitingly, for 2022 before we get back into the NFL in the autumn. But yeah, it would have been a shame if at the last hurdle you'd have fallen or vomited on the hurdle or whatever.
Yeah, no, don't hold out hope that me holding my dinner in live on air. But yeah, how are you?
I was okay until I heard that. To be honest, yeah. I'm not excited by the prospect of live vomit, but hopefully it won't happen. If I keep drinking this delicious rum, perhaps I'll join you in the live vomiting.
Shut it, you.
I will not shut it, and we'll crack on with the start of our show and explain why I'm just so thrilled to have some rum.
Yeah, and as you rightly said, we'll get underway with our special bottle of rum playoff prediction competition. How did the NFL Championship affect the competition? It's your turn this week, so take it away.
Yes, indeed. And it's an easy one this week because there were only 2 games. We split in each of them, so there was always going to be scores done. And we tied it up. I got one right, you got one right. There was no you bet, so the final score for Championship Week was Jez 1, Matt 1, which brought the playoff total to Jez 9, Matt 7, which means that even if I get the Super Bowl wrong and you get it right, I've won the playoff competition.
Yeah. And that's why I sent an angry Amazon man to your door, right?
Yeah, well, he wasn't angry. He was just a bit demanding. We knew that I had won already, so Matt very graciously made sure that the prize was delivered to my doorstep immediately. But I don't know if any of you out there have ever ordered alcohol from Amazon. Basically, they like interrogate you on your doorstep. They're like, we need your date of birth. We need your name. We need to know how many avocados you've eaten this week. We need to know who is your favorite team. We need to know how many toes you have. And it's just an interrogation before they'll actually give you the rum. But I answered the 20 questions, and therefore I have my prize, and it's the Christmas version.
They sent you the Christmas one.
Yeah. So Amazon obviously still have a stock of the Christmas Dead Mans, but that's fine. I mean, I did get a bottle of Dead Man's Fingers for Christmas from Tamsanaki, who's in the chat. This one has lasted longer than that already. I pretty much inhaled that bottle that I got for Christmas. I was probably supposed to share the bottle I got for Christmas with my wife, but let me say, I did not. I pretty much drank it on the night that I received it. I smashed that back. No wonder I put on so much weight over Christmas. It was just rum weight. There's nothing else there.
Rum weight, yeah. Sounds like a good type of weight to put on, right? Rum weight.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much where all of my weight ever came from. Rum and fried chicken. That's how I put on weight.
Yeah, sounds
wonderful things.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, sounds like a plan for Super Bowl weekend. That does fried chicken and rum.
Yes, well,
if I'm not too unwell, and anyway, I can't do Super Bowl live. Sorry, this year, because I've got to work on Monday. So yeah, it's not happening.
in the immortal words of Gold Rush's Tony Beats, I guess it sucks to be you, huh?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Or it hopefully tonight it won't both suck and blow to be you.
Well, yeah.
But we'll see. We'll hold off on the live vomit for now. But we're gonna save the Super Bowl discussion for the end of the show. But actually, this week we're going to talk about all 32 teams, culminating in those two teams that are in the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Rams. Before the season started, you and I got together on this podcast and we gave our predictions as to whether the records that the teams achieved this year would be higher or lower than they were in the 2020 NFL season. Now, obviously, the game changed a little bit from 2020 to 2021. There was an extra regular season game, so we adjusted the previous record slightly. If they had a losing record, we gave them another loss. If they had a winning record, we gave them another win, just to have that comparison directly. So what we're going to do, in addition to just chatting basically about how things went for each of the teams, we're going to see how we did in terms of higher or lower. And looking through it in terms of putting notes together, I'm fairly impressed with us, to be honest.
Yeah.
We got pretty accurate with most of them. Some of them were obvious. It was obvious that, certain teams, the Jets, were always going to do worse than the previous year, but still very impressive.
Yeah.
We're doing it in draft order. So we're starting with the worst team, and we're working all the way through to the best teams who are in the Super Bowl. So when we come to that, we won't be talking so much about how their season has gone. We'll be talking about how things will perhaps, hopefully, go for them on Sunday at the Super Bowl. So, are you ready to kick off our first 2 minutes?
I am.
So the first team, the first overall pick in the upcoming draft, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their 2020 record, adjusted, was 1-16. This year, they achieved a record of 3-14, which is an improvement. Couldn't really go down. You could, but only by one. So, Jacksonville Jaguars. What went right? What went wrong? 2 minutes.
I think what went right for them was firing Urban Meyer. That kind of worked, but in the same sense didn't. I think Trevor Lawrence he'll be better coming back this coming season now. If they pick up decently in the free agency and the draft. What went wrong? I don't know. Maybe too much dependence on said Trevor Lawrence. They got a win in London, which was a good thing to see for the fan base of the Jags over here. But
all three of them.
Yeah. Overall, it's better than last year, right?
It was better than last year, but yeah, as we said, you couldn't really decline. I think the hiring of Urban Meyer was going to go one of two ways. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was ever going to be a kind of mediocre effort from him there. It was either going to take them to the moon and take them all the way, or it was going to be a massive bust, and it was a massive bust. I personally believed in the guy at the start of the season. I really thought that he was going to be the person to turn that team around. Hold my hands up. I was absolutely wrong, and I think Shad Khan and the leaders of the Jaguars did realise that at about the right time, and they cut that cord early in the season. Didn't exactly help them get too far ahead in their head coaching search. And sometimes when you fire a coach halfway through the season, it improves the way you play as well. It did slightly, not massively, We need to see a lot more from Trevor Lawrence next year, but we saw some bright things from him at least.
Yeah. That was the second year now that they're going to pick up number 1 overall.
Yep, doesn't happen often.
Certainly doesn't. But yeah, it's a good place to start another rebuild. But we do move on to.
Well, we should say, because we completely neglected to do so, that we each said that their record would be higher.
We did
in 2021, so we got that one right. But
Yeah.
as you were, on to number 2.
Yeah, number 2, which is the Detroit Lions. Last year's record, adjusted because of that extra regular season game, was 5-12. This year's record was 3-13-1. So these two first teams should have been in that Pro Bowl. But anyway, it'd have been more interesting. Let's put 2 minutes up about the Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions are a kind of horrible one to talk about, because when you look at their play on the field, their record doesn't really reflect the heart and the guts that they showed on the field. There were some unlucky losses, and some losses that really they should have just put a little bit more into, and that they would have turned them into wins. They should have beaten Baltimore in week 3. They should have beaten the Vikings in week 5. They should have damn beaten the Steelers in week 10 instead of tying. Both teams just were playing to lose that game, I'm sure. But you put all those on the stat sheet, and all of a sudden you're moving a bit closer to 500. And it would have been about where that team should have been in 2021. They were mediocre. They are definitely in a rebuilding phase. They'll continue into that rebuild next year, but I don't think the 3-13-1 record is really fair for that.
No, and I'll agree. And I think here we both picked them to be higher, which they weren't, which is just a general oversight by us. With Jared Goff bedded in now, I think, again, they need to be smart in picking up weapons for him. They need to build a bit more on the defensive side. It's going to be an overhaul that's needed, but something that can be done in free agency. I know there's going to be a lot of speculation swirling around the next couple of weeks after Super Bowl's happened. Then we come to the draft. It's a good position to be in. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where the Lions go next year.
Yeah, and not to talk outside of the 2 minutes, but in watching the Senior Bowl, whom one of the teams the Detroit Lions staff were coaching, I see them picking up a quarterback and stashing them, maybe to sit behind Jared Goff for a year.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day as we move into the off season and free agency and the draft. We'll come back to that. We will crack on with our next team. So the third pick belongs to the Houston Texans, the third worst team in the league. Their adjusted record was 4-13 in 2020, and this year they achieved 4-13. Nice and consistent. So what do we think of the Houston Texans? Politely, 2 minutes.
It just seemed to go wrong for them, didn't it? But yeah, bad couple of seasons now. I said they were going to go lower than 4-13, but they ended up being the same. So yeah, they really do need to build in a decent quarterback. We know the game is focused on the quarterback being the main guy. Where do they do that? Is it free agency? Is it but who's going to be out there? Is it via trade? I'm not so sure. But picking up maybe a quarterback out of college that seems to have sort of worked for teams this year. I don't know the quarterback classes yet, so I'm gonna have a good old look at that. But yeah, it's just a case of getting a quarterback, I think, and building around that.
See, and the quarterback class for this year coming from the draft isn't particularly strong, but I think they did okay with Davis Mills. I think if there's one major highlight for their season, it is that Davis Mills overachieved for them. They took a punt on him late in last year's draft, and he turned out to be okay. Is he going to be the next, Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers? No. But can he consistently carry them through the next few years as they continue this rebuild? I think so. I really think so. There were a few games that they should probably have taken. May have done so under slightly different circumstances. Week 5 against the Patriots, when the Patriots were still not really bedded in yet. They should have had that game. That was very close. They really should have beaten the Jets in week 12. But when you look at it all, and the fact that they really screwed their head coach, I think 4-12 is about what they deserved, even though I thought they would go higher.
Yeah, but another good position in the draft, isn't it? But like I said, the quarterback class isn't as strong this coming draft year. Next one on our list is everybody's favourite New York Jets. They had an adjusted record last year by us of 2-15. They did go better, which is a shock. Their record for this year is 4-13. Yeah, New York Jets, right?
I mean, yes, they improved their record. We both said that they would improve their record, but let's not get too excited. Like, the difference between 2 wins and 4 wins isn't that great in terms of an NFL adjustment anyway. For me, I think the Jets are the biggest disappointment of the year. When you look at that 2-15 record and how high that put them in the draft last year, picking up Zach Wilson, who seemed to be, one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. They were arguing outside of Trevor Lawrence that he was the best quarterback of the rest, which is why they drafted him second. But it seems like, and it's still early days, but it seems like he might be a bust. When I look at how they did this season and Mike White came in to the same offense and lit it up and threw 5 touchdowns. When Joe Flacco was in there, he managed the team really well. Wilson did not fit, did not improve as the season went on. If anything, he regressed. So I think Jet's going to jet. It's disappointing, but not so bad for you, I suppose.
No, and well, I'm not the biggest Jets fan, am I? It is a shame that they're not offering too much go, shall we say, when it comes to division rivalry games. It's a shame to see Zach Wilson not living up to potential and what he did in college. Where do they go? Are they going to say stuff it with Zach Wilson and trade him?
No,
not so sure. Are they gonna try and get an older quarterback in? I'm not so sure there. They draft another quarterback again. It's a draft class that has nothing in it really.
Yeah. I'm impressed with the coaching staff though. I think Robert Saleh has come in and done a good job.
Yeah.
But they've got to get out of their own way a little bit. As did our next team on the slate, staying in New York. The New York Giants had an adjusted record in 2020 of 6-11. In 2021, they regressed and only achieved 4-13. Why do we think that was?
Yeah, well, I said they'd go lower, which they did. A bit of an odd one with New York Giants. I thought Joe Judge was a decent coach. Obviously doesn't fit the head coaching position, and he's not anyway. He's gone back to New England as the offensive coordinator. Where do the Giants build again? Do you look at building around what they already have? Do you build in and get a quarterback that may be in free agency? Who knows? With Brady retiring, I mean, that could be a challenge for him, couldn't it? Turn the Giants around. Who knows? But yeah, they've got to improve this year. Otherwise, there's going to be no way out of that vicious cycle that you end up with losing seasons like 5-6 years running.
Yeah, and again, it was injuries really that kind of took them down this year, and the fact that they couldn't keep Daniel Jones's weapons healthy. You had oh my god, name's just completely gone out of my head. Their big running back. Why can't I remember his name? He returned from his ACL injury and kind of was a slow burn into the game. That's going to really bug me. Why can't I remember his name? Saquon Barkley. Don't know why that escaped me. Saquon Barkley was a bit of a slow kind of return to the game. I'm not sure he was back to his full form. They lost Daniel Jones at the end of the season as well. He wasn't having a brilliant season, so that didn't hurt them too much. And all of their wide receivers missed games as well and didn't really live up to the hype in terms of Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney. So people got to step up.
Yes,
hopefully with the head coaching change, they can do that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, there are names bounding around, aren't there, and decisions that have been made already. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they go this coming year. Next on our list is not a New York team. It's a Carolina team, and it's the Panthers. Adjusted record from last year, we gave them 5-12. The record this year was the same, 5-12. We're good at this, right? Let's put 2 minutes up.
I mean, they kind of played like a New York team, so it's kind of keeping on that New York theme. And they had Sam Darnold, who was a former New York guy. He didn't really live up to the hype that I gave him even. I really thought that the problem was the New York Jets, and he'd come into this offense and light it up.
Yeah. He
did at first, but that all changed the moment that Christian McCaffrey went down, and then it just became a carbon copy of 2020, where that team cannot perform unless Christian McCaffrey is on the field and healthy.
Yeah.
The offense runs too much around him. The coaching staff don't seem to have any kind of answer for his injury. They brought in Cam Newton to try and replace Sam Darnold when he went down with injury. That wasn't the answer either. They just failed to adjust on every level. I mean, if they'd have had Darnold and Newton on the field at the same time and created some bespoke packages for that, we might have seen something exciting and the Panthers might have turned their season around, but they didn't. It was a massive failure on their part.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like you said, too many distractions, too much reliance on CMC. Where do they go with that? I mean, they're gonna have to do something to counteract if he goes down again. He's not getting any younger. The whole Cam Newton project slightly backfired on them, which, I mean, the guy was out of the game for a fair while before he was brought back to Carolina. Kind of like the prodigal son. Great story that he got back to where he began, but Cam Newton again, only getting older, doesn't have the same arm since that injury way back.
No, he's not the same, and we learned that in New England. He's got the legs. He's definitely got the legs.
Yeah,
he can still run with the ball, but as a pure quarterback, as a passer, it just wasn't there.
It'd be a fantastic running back.
Yeah. It's a guy that maybe you switch to tight end. Try that Tim Tebow experiment again.
Yeah.
If nothing else, he could have stepped in a little bit for Christian McCaffrey in that offense, but he didn't. So, right, moving on to a team that I could probably discuss for more than 2 minutes, but I won't. It's my Chicago Bears, who in 2020 had an adjusted record of 9-8. Those were the days. 2021, 6-11. Where did it go wrong, Matt? Have you been listening to my rants all year? 2 minutes.
Well, I believed in them, and I thought, they could build and go higher, which sadly for the Bears fan base they didn't. I think the buck stopped with the coaches, the general manager, the whole organisation. That's now changed, as we said a couple of weeks ago. Will it change around their fortunes again? Do they rely on good old Red Rifle Andy Dalton next year? Do they put their faith in the young rookie QB? I can't think of his name now. I can say Justin Fields, but it's not, is it?
It is Justin Fields, yeah.
It is Justin Fields. See, I know my stuff, right? I'd trust Justin Fields a bit more. Give him some decent receivers. Yeah, they could do so much better, and I think next year they will.
Yeah, they can't be worse. And while you had some faith in them and went higher, I firmly said lower, because they kept Matt Nagy into the 2021 season, and that was really where the season ended. Thankfully, that's behind them now, and we've got a new head coach. Will he be any good? Who knows? That's something for another day. But he was really the problem. The coaching and some of the general manager decisions from Ryan Pace were not good. Matt Nagy couldn't coach his way out of a wet paper bag. We had all of the tools there, like for his faults.
Yeah.
Getting Justin Fields was a good move. Getting some of the pieces on the offensive line did the job. Just the coaching wasn't there. So hopefully 2022 will be different, or I'll be crying into my rum again.
Yeah, interesting season, and it's nice to see a change in management and coaching for Chicago and their
Everything.
Faithful fan base.
Cleaned house.
Cleaned house.
You'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got an indoor football league in not in Chicago itself, but you have one in the States. So
in Southern Illinois, yeah.
That's right. Anyway, we're not talking IFL, we're talking NFL. And the next one on our list is the Atlanta Falcons. We gave them an adjusted record of 4-13 last year, and this year they went 7-10. So something worked, something clicked, just not enough. Let's put 2 minutes up.
Yeah, and we both said they would go higher. I don't think either of us expected them to go, 3 games higher. That's an overachievement as far as I'm concerned. 7-10. Massive overachievement based on what that team had going for it. Aside from picking up Pitts in the first round of the draft, I don't think they really did much to build that team. They just stuck with the status quo from the year before. They and ahed about whether Matt Ryan still had it and was their future. They didn't really answer that question. They just rolled with it. And that seems to be what the Falcons are doing at the moment. They're just rolling with what they've got and hoping for the best. It worked out enough to pick up a few extra wins, but not enough to really make gravy in the NFL. I think one of the major issues that they had, and it's a tough one, was Calvin Ridley. He was on and off the field with mental health issues, which is fine, but when you don't have that many weapons, losing one of your major weapons for whatever reason is always going to end badly for you. So something to try and help him out and get him more on the field in 2022.
Yeah, and like you said, Matt Ryan desperately needs weapons, and it is really that simple. I mean, gone are the days of the Atlanta Falcons making playoffs and everything else. It it only feels a couple of years back when they were in the infamous Super Bowl with New England, which they had tied up at half time. But yeah, weapons for Matt Ryan for the Falcons. Then the sky's the limit.
Until Matt Ryan has to retire, because we're getting to that stage now. He's been in the league 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
He's been in there a good while.
Yep. Yeah. Next one up, maybe.
Yeah. Who's it going to be? You've got to get that person in the door first. But we digress. We'll get back to the order as it stands. And the next up team is the Denver Broncos. Their adjusted record for 2020 was 5-12. In 2021, it was 7-10. Now, we both said that they would be lower than 5-12. We really had very little faith in the Denver Broncos. Why was that? And how did they slightly prove us wrong?
I just think they had more fight this year. They seemed to be scrappier. They seemed to be more aggressive. Both sides of the ball. They didn't really have major issues when they had injuries, and they did have a good few of those. And it seemed to be a less of an embarrassing season for them, and you didn't see so many fans with paper bags with eye holes cut out in the stadium this year. This could have been the story of the season, but they failed to deliver, which is a shame for them. I thought they could have rightly gone to the playoffs and done some damage. That's how I feel about the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, they're a tough one to break down, really, because on one hand, they totally deserved this mediocre 7-10 record. But on the other hand, when you look at some of the weeks that they had, they should have been 11-6 and in the playoffs. The Bridgewater injury at the end of the year really hurt them. That concussion issue that he faced towards the end. I think he excelled for the team. Bridgewater did fairly well. The defense was starting to play well towards the end. Rookie Patrick Surtain really dominated. There was just something missing. It just wouldn't come together in the way that they hoped. And I think that was, unfortunately, down to coaching. We've mentioned previously that Vic Fangio was a fantastic defensive coordinator, but really wasn't the guy that you want heading the team.
Yeah.
Some of these elite coordinators, be they offensive or defense, when they step up to that next level, they're kind of Peter Principled out of the position. So
yeah,
it is what it is. That's another mass change that's happening in Denver, and we could see an even bigger change from Denver because the team's up for sale. We'll have some new owners at some point.
Absolutely, yeah. It could end up with a new name, but we'll get onto a new name shortly.
Very soon. Yeah.
Very, very soon. Next on our list, and surprisingly, I think for a lot of people, is the Seattle Seahawks. Adjusted record that we gave them from last year was 13-4. This year, their record stood at 7-10. The first losing season for a very long time, and Russell Wilson's first ever losing season in his career. Where did it all go wrong for Seattle?
It went wrong where it went wrong in at the end of the 2020 season. Despite that record, it was the fact that the Seahawks offensive line doesn't exist, and to bring back the wet paper bag, getting through them was like punching through a wet paper bag. Russell Wilson had absolutely no time to do anything in the pocket this year. In general, they put too much on his shoulders. The running game that has been the hallmark of these Seattle teams under Pete Carroll and with Russell Wilson at the helm have always been good enough to take that relief off so that Russell Wilson has got time to put the ball elsewhere. The defense is a big part of that Seattle team being successful as well, and they didn't do the job at all this year. So generally, in pushing for those Super Bowl years, they've had to try and rebuild back up, and it hasn't quite come to fruition. They may lose Russell Wilson this season. They almost lost him last season, despite what he might tell you, that he was never interested in leaving. But I think this year might be the year that Russell Wilson goes elsewhere for one or two last good years in another team, a playoff-ready team.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to need to move on, I think, and that is bad news for Seattle. He's been a stalwart for them for longer than most remember.
Yeah, most realise.
It's crazy to think he's been there. Well, he was their quarterback when Seattle played New England in the Super Bowl. That was a long time ago. Crazy what's happened to them. We both correctly said lower. I think a lot of that rested on what happened back end of last season, which you said. So yeah, where does it change for Seattle? Let's wait and see.
Yes, indeed. But
does Pete Carroll go out the door?
No, not yet. I think you need a few consistent years of loss before they get rid of a winning head coach, because Matthew, Pete Carroll is white, and apparently you don't get rid of winning white head coaches. You only get rid of winning black head coaches, because that's the way the NFL works.
Absolutely.
Which is ridiculous, but
absolutely bizarre with what's happened with Brian Flores. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that a bit later, I expect, with the when we get to the Miami Dolphins. But all change in the next team. The Washington Commanders are up next. A new name for the Washington football teams. Don't call them the Washington Redskins. In 2020, their adjusted record was 7-10. Their 2021 record was 7-10. Gotta love consistency. 2 minutes.
We didn't do a consistency prediction, did we?
We didn't do a stay the same, did we? No,
stay the same. No,
higher or lower. We took that variable out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get cards next time and somebody to present it. Anyway, build back stronger in the off season. Now with the not nameless team, can they start getting on with things, having the identity now, proper identity, forging that identity, fixing the stadium. It's all going to be interesting to see what happens with Washington Commanders. I'm excited to see it. I don't know if the Washington Commanders fans are. They've been a bit vocal, but yeah, they've got to really look at putting in pieces, quarterback, offensive line, defensive line. There's holes everywhere, and they need to improve that.
It is a bit of a Swiss cheese situation in Washington for sure. There's a lot of holes on the offense and the defense, and this was supposed to be a better year for them compared to 2020. We saw them make the playoffs in 2020 with their terrible record, but they did well. They beat some big names in that season, and the defense especially shone. But then in 2021, they didn't build on that in any way, shape or form. They had Fitzpatrick at quarterback at the beginning of the year, lest we forget, but he went out very quickly with a hip injury. And it became the Taylor Heineke show very quickly. Fitz was supposed to be the guy that took them to a decent record while bringing along their superstars Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, Terry McLaurin, but it didn't happen, and the defense couldn't bail them out this year as it had the year before, unfortunately. But onwards and upwards. New name, new attitude. We shall see.
Yeah. I'll get onto the chants in another show. It's going to be interesting. However, we move on to our next team up, and that is the Minnesota Vikings. We give them an adjusted record of 7-10. This year they finished 8-9. So, what's happening in Minnesota? Why is it all gone downhill, right?
And it's a difficult question to answer. We both suggested they would be higher, and they were barely. You can't
Barely.
really call it that. They should have been a better team. The pieces are all there. You look down the roster at all these guys, and you've got Cook, you've got Jefferson, you've got Thielen, you've got Westbrook. Even when you look at the QB, Kirk Cousins is good enough to bring that team on. But you can have all the pieces in the world. If you don't put them together, then it's just a mass of pieces in a box. It's not a jigsaw. So they need to have some better management, and I think that really comes down to why they let both their head coach and their general manager go as well. They completely cleaned house in Minnesota. They just weren't instilled in them the drive to win. All the pieces were there. They didn't really suffer with injury too greatly. They had injuries, just like everybody else did, but apart from Dalvin Cook, who can't seem to stay healthy, everyone else only missed a game or two, really. So it wasn't good enough. It didn't upset me as a Bears fan, but they definitely should have done better.
Yeah, and it comes to a fact of, you look at the names that are on that team, and the players start to get fed up of never winning anything. I've been asked that this week. That do NFL teams, like other sports teams, ever get the players ever get fed up of never winning anything, never get into a playoff, never get into the Super Bowl, never winning a ring? And yeah, they probably do. Kirk Cousins certainly should have a ring by now. But it's never happened. New coaching, like you said, better weapons needed. Minnesota, step up.
Not even better weapons, just the weapons that they have need to be weapons rather than innate things sitting in the barrel. But
yeah,
and that really is the story that we're going to carry into the next team. I would expect the Cleveland Browns next. 2020 adjusted record 12-5, and then 2021 8-9. Dear oh dear. Is it ever going to be their year? 2 minutes.
Wow. I said higher. I really did believe in what they'd done last year. I thought maybe another win or two, a proper run at playoffs, even all the way. But Baker Mayfield, poor old Baker Mayfield, just not really living up to what was expected of him. It is a shame. Will he another one? Will he get fed up? Will he go elsewhere? Not this year, I don't think. I don't know his contract situation. Would anybody pick him up? Yeah. There's plenty of teams out there.
I don't know.
But yeah, like I said, it's a strange situation where he had a really good season last year and had a god awful one this year. Yeah, crazy in Cleveland.
I mean, with Baker Mayfield especially, the injuries were the biggest factor in him not performing this year. He probably should have been benched for the majority of the season, not because of performance in the true sense, but because he wasn't the same guy carrying the injury that he had. Okay, his injury was to his non-throwing shoulder, but if you've ever had a bad shoulder or a bad back or any kind of upper body injury, it doesn't matter what you do, you tend to be in fairly constant pain, and even coughing or shuddering too much can send a shiver throughout your entire body. So lots of people have been on Baker Mayfield's back that, oh, well, it wasn't his throwing shoulder, was it? So he should have been fine. Body doesn't work like that. So as long as he can repair himself and come back healthy next year, I can see things improving. But it needs to happen at some point. Otherwise, the team, the people around him, the superstars on the Browns are going to be fed up with the fact that they have yet another quarterback that isn't cutting the mustard. Can you cut mustard? Where's that phrase come from? It's a nonsense phrase, really, isn't it? Don't know why I said it. Cut the mustard.
Yeah.
It's not a very good one.
Unless you can get mustard in solid state, maybe. I don't know. I don't really like mustard.
I don't like mustard either. Why are we talking about mustard?
This is an NFL show, not a food show. Anyway, we move on to the Baltimore Ravens, not food related at all. Adjusted record last season, 12-5. This season record, again, 8-9, another 8-9 team. Baltimore not performing.
I mean, you could eat a raven, and if I ate a raven, I would probably put some mustard on there. But I digress. We seem to have a run. These 8-9 teams seem to be a run of teams that have missed out on the playoffs, despite having made it the year before. Well, not so much with Minnesota, but were definitely expected to do good things, to do great things, and it fell apart because of either ineptitude or injury. In the Baltimore Ravens case, I think the Lamar Jackson injury and all of the other injuries, you forget that so early in the season they lost their first 3 or 4 strings of running back, and they were just having to pick people off the street and sign veterans that really didn't want to be playing anymore to try and fill that gap, and it just didn't work. Considering everything that happened to the Baltimore Ravens this year, I think 8-9 is probably a stellar record, to be quite honest. They just need to get everybody healthy. I don't think there's too much improvement to be done from a technical sense. They just need to have some healthy people on their team, really.
Yeah, and I think keeping people healthy, definitely. Now that COVID isn't so much of an issue, and I touch wood, and I am touching wood.
Isn't it?
Hopefully that COVID doesn't play an impact season next year. It is a case of injury cost them what was a fantastic record last season and turned it into a losing record this year. Coaching staff, fine. It is just pure sense of, as long as you keep Lamar Jackson healthy and his weapons healthy, then they're a very good team. And I hate personally as an opposing fan when the Patriots play the Ravens. It's one of the teams I don't like watching football against.
If there's one thing that happened for the Ravens this year, and I know our time has run out, but the conversation of, Lamar Jackson's just a running back, that kind of came to an end this year. Because when he was healthy, he was more of a pocket passer. That part of his game developed. So excited to see what happens with them going forward. But we must trot on. Next up is a team that we did name drop earlier, and the problems are fairly clear with this team. The Miami Dolphins, whose adjusted record for 2020 was 11-6. They finished 2021 9-8. We both said that they would be lower, and we were right. 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, like you said, we name dropped them earlier, and the whole hoo-ha with Brian Flores and what's happening in the whole legal sense with his claims against the NFL and not hiring black coaches, and
it's become a bona fide thing, hasn't it?
It has, and it's his allegations have been founded. It was bizarre what came out. Bill Belichick, of all people, were involved with texting the wrong Brian. Bonkers.
Bill Belichick, the hero. Who knew?
It's going to be interesting how that unfolds. It's going to be interesting where Miami start to change things. Is Tua Tagovailoa, and I said it again twice running correctly. Is he the answer? Does he go elsewhere? Do they get another quarterback in? Miami, another team that if they want to start pushing up that AFC East, they're going to have to improve.
Yeah, and apologies for anybody listening in podcast form for the rum and coke ASMR, but I definitely needed another rum at this stage. Yeah, it's weird that the Dolphins didn't quite make it in with a 9-8 record. It just shows how competitive the AFC is, and it's even crazier that they fired their head coach with this winning record. But the reasons have come out now, and it was definitely not founded. It's crazy to think that Brian Flores is not going to have a job in 2022. Certainly not as a head coach. I'd like this new pickup though with McDaniel. I think he can do things with Tua. We'll see what happens with the Dolphins, but they're fast becoming one of the other laughing stocks of the AFC East. There seem to be several of them.
Yeah. And McDaniel is had so many memes made about him in the last week or so. Apparently, he looks like a barista out of Starbucks. So there we are.
I mean, he looks like somebody that should be playing D&D rather than head coaching a National Football League team. But
yeah.
The jokes write themselves.
Well, another team that'll be interesting to watch as long as they're not playing New England. We move on from Miami and we go all the way to Indianapolis with the Colts. Their 2020 adjusted record was 12-5. They've ended up this year again another 9-8 team. It should have been so different for them, right?
Yeah. Well, starting the season 0-3 isn't going to help a team to achieve. And when you look at the numbers, those three losses at the beginning are really the difference in not meeting the record from 2020. And I don't want to be harsh and say that the problems all come back to one guy, Carson Wentz. But I'm struggling to see where else it went wrong. They lucked into having the best best running back in the league in Jonathan Taylor. And considering some of the other powerhouse running games that happened in the NFL this year, in the Patriots for one, the Eagles for another, Tennessee when Derrick Henry was healthy, it's a shame that they couldn't ride Jonathan Taylor's rushes through to bigger and better things. The biggest shock of it all was not making the playoffs because they were beaten by the Jags again in the last week of the season. So Carson Wentz isn't the answer.
No, definitely not. So yeah, they are a team a lot further down that pecking order in the draft where, is it a free agency pickup or is it a draft pickup of a quarterback? That's to be seen. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. I truly believed he was a rookie player, thinking we didn't even mention the guy in our draft. But no, he's been there for a few years. What a breakout season for him in that conversation with the NFL awards later on today, stateside. Is he going to be Offensive Player of the Year? I don't think he's in that MVP conversation anymore, which is sad.
And nonsense, frankly, that it always goes to quarterbacks. But
yeah,
we discussed it at length in our last show that if it goes to a certain cheese-related person, then it's a massive sham and a joke.
It's between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, the top two listed by a lot of press over stateside. So yeah,
I'm rooting for Brady, and
yeah, it'd be a nice way for him to go out. Oh no, you would not have. Yeah. A great quarterback gone into retirement, as we said. I think last time round. We had the whole media circus.
Yeah, well, I think he's actually retired since we were last live. I don't remember now,
He
but
has, yeah. He officially did it himself about a week later.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, never say never to Tom Brady, because he never mentioned the word retirement in his statement at all.
No. But there you go. It was a statement so shocking that it woke your wife up. Never thought I'd hear Jeremy say that. Well, there you go. Apparently, the evil exists in New England rather than in its quarterback. But
Yeah.
I still haven't forgiven him for destroying his phone instead of facing the consequences of his deflating actions. But that's another story. Well, let's get on with the next team, which is the Los Angeles Chargers. In 2020, their adjusted record was 7-10. This year, they have improved to 9-8, which is something I predicted and you did not. It wasn't exactly the breakout season that many were expecting.
No.
2 minutes on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, well, it's another team that should have been right up there and challenging. I think they, like you correctly said, they've improved, but not enough. Where does the buck stop, and where does it got to change with them? I think coaching wise they're okay. Maybe a few more offensive weapons, but where does that come? That's going to be probably free agency. Yeah, I'd like to see them get back to how they used to be. I always loved a good AFC battle between the Pats and the Chargers, but it doesn't really happen anymore.
No, they haven't been in the conversation for quite some time. And I do think all the talent is there for the Chargers to be able to get back to that form, but it just hasn't really come together quite as quickly as it has some of the other teams with young quarterbacks. The obvious comparison is the Bengals, who obviously have made it to the Super Bowl, but a few things going in the Chargers' favor rather than going in the Bengals' favor, and it could be the other way around, and the Chargers could be in the Super Bowl. I don't think that they're a bad team by any means. Justin Herbert is improving year on year. They've really picked up their running game again this year. The defense is stepping up. All the pieces are there. It's just more time needs to pass, and they need to become more comfortable with each other as a team. They need to hold on to the players that they've got and not lose too much to free agency, draft well. I really can see big things coming for this team as long as they can continue on the same upward trajectory that they've been on. Yes.
Yeah. What's the Chargers? Next one is a team that have had all sorts of problems the last week since even Pro Bowl. That's the New Orleans Saints. We adjusted their 2020 record 13-4. This year, I think a lot's got to do with losing Drew Brees, in my opinion. They went 9-8, so another 9-8 team. What's happening with New Orleans?
I think you're right. I think the decline this year has been down to losing Drew Brees to retirement. And that's not to say that he was irreplaceable, but he was certainly irreplaceable when you've had a different quarterback playing for your team seemingly every week.
Mm-hmm.
They started out with Jameis Winston, rather. That was fine. He's not going to be a Drew Brees-esque quarterback, but he was doing the job, managing the team decently enough until he went down with injury. Then they turned to Taysom Hill, who's not a quarterback. I stand by that. And and he didn't really perform, and then he went out injured. Trevor Siemian was looking good for a week or so until people got the measure of him, and then he went down injured, and then they picked up Ian Buck, and the list continued, and they just went through just picking random people up from the street and putting them in at quarterback. And throughout all of that, the person that you would have expected to carry the team on their back in Alvin Kamara didn't really do so. And he's not going to be doing so any longer anyway, because he decided during the Pro Bowl it was more important to kick the holy hell out of a dude rather than actually play the Pro Bowl and enjoy the weekend and act like a professional. So his career is probably over.
Yeah.
They've now lost Sean Payton, their head coach. He's decided to not retire, but certainly move on from the game, at least for this year. Very disappointing in the New Orleans Saints. I've eaten all the time.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head though, and like that whole issue around Alvin Kamara, the incident happened the day before the Pro Bowl. They let him play, and then after the Pro Bowl, he got arrested straight afterwards.
Wow, what a stellar example of competition to be your final game of it was the 2022 Pro Bowl.
Yeah, yeah.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Yeah, career down the pan though. As I said to you when it happened, is absolutely career down the pan. Such a promising player who's had a great career, and then he's just gone and ruined it all by getting drunk.
Happens all too often in the NFL, unfortunately, and
Yes.
and not just in the NFL. It happens everywhere. So much potential wasted with silly decisions. But
yes,
we move on to the next team. Known somewhat for silly decisions, but seem to do okay this year. The Philadelphia Eagles, whose record in 2020, while adjusted, was an atrocious 4-12. Much better in 2021, finished the season 9-8, and even made the playoffs. What do we think of the Eagles? 2 minutes.
Yeah, impressive for a team that probably still in a bit of a downturn in what was having those heights of winning the Super Bowl a couple of years back. The fact that they've improved from last year speaks volumes. The coaching staff obviously hitting the right notes with the players on the field. It's exciting to see. I know quite a few Eagles fans who are excited to see what will happen next year. A good run into the playoffs, which was nice. I know they fell at the first hurdle, didn't they? But yeah, interesting to see them back punching with the big boys.
Yeah, and the running game was the big part of that. Absolutely. I was a big believer in Jalen Hurts coming into the season, and I was for the majority of the season. But I do have a little nagging thing in my mind now that maybe he's not the total package that the Eagles need. They could protect him, and as long as he can manage a game and not make any silly decisions, throw interceptions and that kind of thing, then he will be fine. But they hit a winner on that running game. They had a bit of a three-headed monster going on. It didn't matter who you plugged into that running back position. They performed well and carried the team, and certainly carried them to that 9-8 record. They're still a very young rebuilding team. They don't really have star power established on that team. So if they can draft well, spend some decent money in free agency, then really this could be a very scary team going forwards. Very, very scary. In a very weak division as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We move on to our next up, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
We're staying in Pennsylvania.
Who had an adjusted record of 13-4 last year, and have ended this year 9-7-1. And now Big Ben Roethlisberger's gone. Where did Pittsburgh improve? What went wrong this year? I think I know the answer though.
I mean, we both suggested that their record would be lower.
Mm-hmm.
They massively overachieved in 2020. That undefeated streak that they went on against a lot of weak teams really didn't justify a 13-4 record in 2020. Likewise, but not fully to the same extent, they overachieved in 2021 as well. There were games that they had no business winning. There were games they had no business tying, frankly. That tie against the Detroit Lions should have been a loss for them. It was an atrocious game, almost as bad as the Pro Bowl last week. It should be expunged from our memories. Is it a big loss that Big Ben has retired? In the grand scheme, yes. In terms of his 2021 performance, no. That pesky grass will leave him alone now. We'll move on to trying to sack other quarterbacks. Rebuild time for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They haven't been through a rebuild for a long, long time. Certainly in Mike Tomlin's tenure as head coach, they've never had to rebuild. So it'll be interesting to see how that carries forward.
Yeah, and Mike Tomlin is the right guy, I feel, to keep that going. What a fantastic coach!
Great coach.
Been there a hell of a long time, and always had a very good reputation for getting the best out of what can sometimes have been a weak Steelers team. Big Ben, yes, he's gone. And he'll probably go to commentary or something. That'll be interesting. The guy's full of personality. Rebuild, like you said. Big rebuild. It's going to be a couple of years before we see them punching back in the playoffs, I think.
Unless they make a big splash and trade for one of the quarterbacks that aren't free agents, but are probably on their way out of a team, such as Rodgers, Wilson. Yeah. They can pick up one of those guys. Boom. Right back into the conversation once again.
Yeah, but without blinking, that could happen.
But I've had a bit of rum now, so I think I'm just about ready to discuss our next team. And it's tough for me because I'm going to have to say nice things about them. The New England Patriots are next. In 2020, their adjusted record was 7-10. They flipped those numbers around in 2021. Their record is 10-7, exiting this season. Made the playoffs under a rookie quarterback. You can say nice things about your team first. Take up all the time you need. 2 minutes.
Yeah, where do I start with New England? They had a really good free agency. Picked up some pieces that were missing. Got a lot of players back off COVID list, the opt-outs, which helped on defense. Players stepped up all over the field. The defense was really good. The offense seemed to, all right, the first couple of weeks didn't seem to click under Mac Jones. There wasn't very much trust from Josh McDaniels in Mac Jones. I think he hesitated to take those proverbial training wheels off, but when the wheels did come off, Mac Jones seemed to be able to perform pretty well. Yes, a rookie quarterback in New England starting a season is very rare. Not even Tom Brady did that in his first year. He did not start from the off. New head coach in Joe Judge.
Not head coach, coordinator.
Offensive coordinator. We don't need another head.
Bill Belichick's never going to retire, ever.
No. Let's see what happens with what I'm going to now refer to him as is gritty Mac Jones, because of that dance he did into the end zone after they was kind of played flag football, didn't they, in the Pro Bowl? Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to talk about Mac Jones because I said I was going to be positive about the Patriots, and I just can't be positive about Mac Jones. But I think the biggest thing for the Patriots this year, in their continuing rebuild, and they're still rebuilding, so the fact that they did so well and made the playoffs is really impressive for them, is the running game. That was stellar, and their defense. Now, the defense has been low-key great for a good 5 years now. In Brady's last years, they really helped to carry him through to the Super Bowl as well. So, big things probably from the Patriots. Just don't rely on Mac Jones too much. It's going to bite you in the ass. That's all I'm saying.
And going into his second year, he's going to have built up a bit more consistency. Fingers crossed.
He's going to get forced out of the pocket and crushed. Because as soon as he's outside the pocket, he's useless.
Or just play you come to New England and you've got to play Pro Bowl rules.
It'll just be 9 offensive linemen, Mac Jones, and a running back, and they won't bother with receivers.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Couple of big offensive linemen in New England. Anyway, another 10-7 season this year for them. Their adjusted record that we give them was 8-9 from last year, so they have improved, and it's the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think they overachieved, personally. You look at the team and the way that they played. How did they get these wins? I've very consistently bet against the Raiders all the way through, and out of nowhere they managed to amass this winning record. They won the games they had no business winning, and then just as you were like, okay, fine, maybe we've got something here, you get behind them and they lost those games. It was bizarre. Derek Carr, still don't know what he's about. Still don't know whether he's going to be the long-term answer in Las Vegas. I don't think they even know in Las Vegas to this moment. Josh Jacobs, brilliant running back. Where was he this year? Didn't seem to get the running game going at all. They might have been a very dangerous team if they'd actually managed to get that going. I don't understand the Raiders, but 10-7, cool. I guess they build on that for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was good to see some of the Raiders players playing Pro Bowl. I don't think it happens too often. They don't tend to get voted to the Pro Bowl. However, Derek Carr, he's had an okay-ish / decent year. He'll improve. I think they've got a really, really good chance if they just plug the gap that started to appear. That they could really have a really good run next year. But hold off till 2024, and you can play Super Bowl at home.
It seems to be the trend. It's all the rage playing the Super Bowl in your home stadium.
It is, absolutely.
Especially in the last couple of years.
Two in a row.
Exclusively in the last couple of years, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely.
It never happened, and now it happens all the time. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And I think the league have made a decision to play all future Super Bowls in Jerry World because the Cowboys will never get there.
That's a good joke. I hope you came up with that one on your own. Otherwise, you need to pay some royalties there. Moving on.
Absolutely, I came up with it on my own.
Liar. Next up is the Arizona Cardinals, which is an interesting team to discuss. They had a mixed season. 2020, they were 8-9, very mediocre 500-ish kind of season. 2021, they were 11-6, and tapped for big things, especially by me, but wasn't quite the season that they expected it to be. Why is that? 2 minutes.
Well, we had them, both of us predicted higher, which they did. They did really well.
Yeah,
they had a fantastic start to the season, and then you start losing the likes of what's his name, Kyler Murray, and you lost other.
We lost DeAndre Hopkins for a very long period as well. Yeah,
that took its toll on that team. That's where they started to pick up those niggly losses that ultimately cost them what should have been their Super Bowl year. You certainly said very good things about the Cards.
Yeah,
you tipped them for almost tipped them for greatness this year. And and rightly so. But like I said, you lose your big players, and you don't seem to recover enough to really give it a push.
It's crazy to think that 2 teams from the NFC West made the playoffs, and neither of them were the Arizona Cardinals, who started 8-0. Was it 8 games they won at the beginning of the season before they picked up a loss?
Yeah.
It's nuts. And this team is a lot better than they were in their what was an 8-8 season in 2020 that we adjusted to 8-9. A lot better. And they weren't a bad team in 2020 either. So it's just so bizarre that they can win so many games, play so well, even without Kyler Murray and without their biggest target in D-Hop. They played well, didn't quite manage to push it through and pick up the win. I wonder if there is just something in the way of them going over the top. And I can't put my finger on what it is. It's going to need a deep bit of analysis and a deep dive to work out what the problem is. But surely they can only go up.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. Wow. I think time is on their side to get their players back healthy, obviously, before the season. Let's hope for their sake that, well, as long as you're a Cards fan anyway, that they improve. There we are. We're going to Jerry World now after that fantastic joke thought up exclusively by me. Yes, it's the Dallas Cowboys. They had a god-awful record, and it was an adjusted record because they had a losing record of 6-11. And this year they thoroughly improved. They went 12-5. What went right? What went wrong for Dallas?
Well, what went right is fairly obvious. It was the defense actually defending. You know, the clue was in the name. Dallas forgot how to defend the ball for an entire year, and they finally remembered how to do that. We talked about it in our award show. Certain key members of that defense were able to step up and really help them to learn how to defend again in Diggs and in Micah Parsons, amongst others. That's not to say that the rest of the team were slacking off. They couldn't really get much worse than the 6-11 season. They lost Dak Prescott. So between getting everybody back healthy and generally stepping up on the defensive side of the ball, I think the Dallas Cowboys are about ready to take it to the next level.
Yeah, and one name that sticks out there is Micah Parsons. He is on that list I spoke about, the awards list for Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Rookie. Yeah, he's a rookie, isn't he?
He is a rookie, yeah.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. What a talent. That was a standout year for the guy. He'll only get better. Do they have enough in them to go one better or a couple better and push, really push to get the number 1 overall seed in the playoffs? Not that helped either, number 1 seed this year. Yeah, Dallas is a funny team where they've done really well this year and could be god awful next year. There's just not enough consistency if they lose Dak Prescott.
And I think one thing that they can improve on is consistency at running back. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott really performed to the top of his game this year.
Nowhere near.
Perhaps that was the difference. Who knows? We're in this pack of good teams now. We're firmly into the playoff teams, so it's very difficult to really pinpoint what went wrong outside of what went wrong in the playoff game that they lost. But we do persist. The Buffalo Bills are next. In 2020, their record, although adjusted, was a stellar 14-3. Only amassed 11-6 in 2021 with the AFC East becoming more competitive. What do we think of this team? We both said that they would not get to 14-3 again, and we were right. But what went right? What went wrong? 2 minutes.
I think Josh Allen is what went right. He had another good year. What went wrong is they just didn't have the answer in that that game against Kansas in the playoffs. And it was really, really short. It was on, as we said, it was on a coin toss, and if it had gone the other way, which will certainly come to the Bengals, is even when they lost the coin toss, they went on and won. It's a funny old rules that they've got in the overtime. But the game previous, they absolutely annihilated the Patriots. Not even ashamed to say that. And yeah, I think as long as you build more consistency and more consistent players, not saying they aren't there already, but when you get the pieces clicking in Buffalo, then yeah, they're gonna sit at the top of the AFC East for another season or two, I think.
Yeah, and you've kind of skirted around my thoughts on it, really. The Buffalo Bills were just unlucky in the playoffs, at least. It could have been easily have been their win coming out of that game if they'd have gone on offense in overtime first. Then it could be a very different conversation, and we could have a very different Super Bowl on our hands. Who knows? So I'm not sure that too much needs to be done in the off season for them, other than retaining what they have and continuing, not getting complacent, and continuing a training regimen to make sure that they don't decline in any way. But you're right, Josh Allen went from strength to strength. He did have a few wobbly moments at certain points of the season, so maybe they can fix that. But no real complaints about the Buffalo Bills. It's just that their division got more competitive, and they can't play in the wind, apparently.
Apparently, yeah. Need to build a better stadium then.
It is a very old stadium.
It is. It's one of the older ones for sure. Next up, we have another really good team that they fell short as well. It's the Tennessee Titans. Good year last year. We adjusted them to 12-5, and this year they've gone and proven our adjustment. 12-5 this year, and we both said lower, but Tennessee kept on rolling, and have probably ended up with Coach of the Year in Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Coach of the Year personally, because he didn't really change anything from 2020 into 2021. If anything, he failed to push his team up to the next level, in my opinion. There's been a lot of conversation since the playoffs about Ryan Tannehill and whether he is really the long-term answer for that team. And I put him in the same kind of category as Jimmy Garoppolo.
Mm-hmm.
There will be moments where he shows flashes of greatness and can carry his team to heady heights, but it's you just don't know what Ryan Tannehill you're going to get. Is it the Ryan Tannehill that only manages to get 100 yards and throws a couple of interceptions, or is it the guy that looks after the ball, throws 3 touchdowns, picks up 300 yards? You don't know what you're getting. So maybe that's the adjustment that needs to be made there.
Yeah, I think it is that question is that around Tannehill is do you just now get somebody else in? I mean, we've already said a number of times. I don't think the draft is the option. Do you trade him? Who wants Ryan Tannehill? Maybe the next team up may want him. But yeah, it's bonkers to think that they are probably going to end up with Coach of the Year. There's no improvement. There's no there's no Super Bowl for them this weekend, and they ended up the number 1 seed in the AFC. Yeah, they were won and gone. It doesn't happen very often, but it happened this year.
Yeah. They're not going to be able to go to the next level unless something changes. They're just going to be... They will be the... to bring back a conversation from earlier, they'll be the, at the time, San Diego Chargers of the AFC. Yeah. Always in the postseason, but never making it to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, next. Another team that had a slightly disappointing end to their season, but it was not down to the quarterback situation, at least this year, might be next year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who finished 12-5 in 2020 with our adjustment, and in 2021 they improved that to 13-4. What do we think of the Bucs? Or at least, what did we think of the Bucs? Next year's a different conversation. How were they in 2021?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom Brady showed what he was all about. Yes, he really did show his true colours with throwing that surface tab on the yeeting it after he got fed up. He is now gone, as we know, from Tampa. Gronkowski's talking about going to play with Joe Burrow. So, you know, he's got Gronk has still got a long while left in his career. He's still quite young, younger than most people think he is. Yeah, what has to change for them is obviously they're going to have to pick up a quarterback. I don't think they're going to rely on the rookie that they got. I don't think he's going to be ready.
Trask.
Because he had very little, if no, snaps at all. So yeah, Tampa Bay. I think I'll be changing your record next year.
Yeah, I mean I suggested that they would be lower. I was wrong in that. You did say that they would be higher. So kudos to you there. Where did it go wrong? Injuries again, and it's been the case for so many teams this year. It's injuries. They lost Godwin late in the season. They had so many different injuries that they had to try and overcome. Running back was a huge issue for them in terms of injury as well. And as good as Tom Brady is, there's only so much that even a guy of his level can do if he hasn't got people who have had those reps on the field with him in terms of carrying it forward. So they are going to struggle next year. But they won the Super Bowl last year, so
it
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really. They've had their greatness.
Yes, yeah. I think it's going to be a long old while before they get back to there, though.
Depends what happens at quarterback and what members of their roster they're able to retain. A lot of free agents.
Yes,
this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We come on to your second favourite team now.
Let me get a drink.
That's the Green Bay Packers. Adjusted record for last season, we gave them 14-3. The real record stood at 13-4. Both of us said lower, which is fully correct. What's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers? What's going to happen with Green Bay? What was right and what was wrong with their season?
The fact that they got Aaron Rodgers back for another season is what really went right for them. When we made these predictions, we were very much unsure whether we'd get Aaron Rodgers back for the Green Bay Packers. But in the same way as, playing the Price is Right, when you pull up a king or an ace, going lower just seems to be the obvious choice. And when you're 14-3 the year before, saying they're going to be lower is probably a fair bet, and that's the bet we took and got that right. They had a great season. I obviously hate them, and I will correct you. They're my 32nd favorite team in the NFL. Is that down to Aaron Rodgers? Not as much as people make out, I don't think. I think their defense especially stepped up this year, especially against the run. They managed to stop the run fairly consistently, which is historically something they weren't brilliant at. And all the pieces were there.
Mm-hmm.
They'd built themselves a nice team of veterans. That's going to change this year. Lots of free agents, and they may lose Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers was definitely deep in thought and been deep in conversation about the next step of his career. Does he continue to play? Does he end up doing what I said he would do and playing in purple? Maybe not purple.
Playing in purple. I thought you were going to say Jeopardy again. It's too late for that.
That's true. Yeah, it's going to be... I think it's going to be Jordan Love under centre next year, which is going to impact their record, I think. Yeah, Green Bay maybe on a downward slope for a little bit.
Please.
You might actually beat the Packers this year.
Whoever is a god that you worship, or if you're not religious, just put good vibes out into the universe, or whatever you do to G yourself up. Let's pray that the Packers are terrible in 2022 for the good of mankind, for the good of all mankind. Anyway, moving on. Only a few teams left now before we get to our Super Bowl preview. So we're into teams that failed to make the Super Bowl at the last hurdle. The San Francisco 49ers are up next. Their 2020 record was 6-11. They made a record of 12-5 in 2021. Massive, massive improvement. We both said higher. Here we go. What do you think of the 49ers?
What do I think of the 49ers? Jimmy Garoppolo, he's had a better season than previous, obviously. Deebo Samuel, bright light in that team as well. Where did it all go wrong? I think that catch in that game against, I think they played the Rams, didn't they? And the Rams hadn't beaten them in, what was it, like 6 attempts, something like that.
It was 6 games going into the championship game. Yeah.
And I picked the 49ers to win that one and go to the Super Bowl after they came through the wild cards. Yeah, I think Garoppolo might not be there.
Because you were wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo will be there next year. I see him potentially going to Tampa Bay. I think that might be a good fit for him.
Could be.
But yeah, they're there or thereabouts, aren't they? They seem to be okay. But yeah, maybe start to rely on their rookie QB.
I'm not sure about their rookie. We need to see what he's made of. Lacks experience, but that's a story for discussing this year. Last year, you're right, Jimmy Garoppolo did very well. I think it was statistically his best season ever with the 49ers. Yeah. And the main thing that changed for them is the fact that they had players to put on the field. They did not have that in 2020. Massive injury problems, especially amongst their key guys like Bosa. Deebo Samuel stepped up for them as well, as you say. They had all the pieces. They just needed to have them on the field all at the same time, and that happened this year. Made up for them. I like the 49ers. Big things coming for them as long as this rookie manages to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good. Yeah, they had a good season in that season previous. Was it the Super Bowl before that season they'd lost?
Yes, so the 2019 season, they made the Super Bowl and lost to the Chiefs in the
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
right.
Yeah, and
They
then
got
came immediately into an injury-ridden,
mhm.
COVID-ridden,
Yeah,
horrible season. One to
yeah,
forget.
yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes that 2020 season rings truest for some of the teams that had the the worst knock-on effects of the COVID opt-outs, etc., etc. However, a team that COVID didn't seem to affect last year, what are those Kansas City Chiefs? 2020 record adjusted was 15-2, so they had a really good season. And then because they came into that season as Super Bowl champs, this year 12-5. We both said lower, both correct there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Again, it was the safe bet.
it was safe bet.
You don't bet higher on a king.
Absolutely not. And that's what they were coming into last season. Now they're not. Thank God for that. Thank God for Joe Burrow saving us from Jackson Mahomes and his twerking on the Super Bowl on TikTok. Thank you, Joe Burrow.
Jackson
Anyway,
Mahomes.
Jackson Mahomes. That's his little brother. Just don't go on TikTok. It's fine. Just avoid
I don't.
TikTok.
I don't. That seems to be stellar advice for life. But I will put 2 minutes on the clock and we'll get back to the football. Yes, the Chiefs. Interesting discussion amongst the Chiefs because this 12-5 record all really came in the end of the season. They had a horrible start to the season, and Mahomes looked like he had completely lost it. It looked like the sophomore slump had just come a few years late, and that he was not the same guy. That did turn around. Still to this day, I can't explain to you why Mahomes was playing badly and what changed to bring him back around. He did turn it back on. It's inexplicable as far as I'm concerned. Their team seems fairly solid at this point. I don't think they have too many guys that they are at risk of losing to free agency going into 2022. I would say on to the next one. Big things for the Chiefs, but clearly, as we've seen, all it takes is Mahomes to stop performing and the team goes into the toilet. So who really knows?
Yeah, well, I said his slump came because he coming into this year he'd had that massive contract pay, didn't he? $512 million contract, which was absolutely bonkers and infuriated me because I just couldn't understand because he's still a very young quarterback. Yeah, not much that they can really do apart from hold on to what they've got. A few tweaks here and there. Coaching's fine. I do love Andy Reid and the fact that when they went to the White House after winning, they had McDonald's with Donald Trump. There we are. Yeah,
Cheeseburgers.
Absolutely. Yeah. They'll be there or thereabouts still.
Just to be clear, before you get hate mail, it was the McDonald's that you were all on board for, not the Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Wouldn't want to put an end to your political career before it starts by
absolutely
by making out that you're some kind of Trump supporter. You are not.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so as we move into our last two teams, which are the teams in the Super Bowl, we're first going to discuss how their season went to date, ignoring the fact that they're in the Super Bowl, and just talking about how things went and where they can improve, as we've been doing with everyone else. And then we'll close out with the final 2 minutes talking about the Super Bowl. So, first up, the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, who in 2020 had an adjusted record of 4-12. And in 2021, despite where they are now, they only amassed 10-7, which is a massive improvement, don't get me wrong, but it's not the playoff record that you would expect. what went right for the Bengals? How did they get to where they got to? 2 minutes.
I think what went right with the Bengals is, as we said, not last week, the week before, was the fact that they've had Joe Burrow now 2 seasons. They've added Jamar Chase, which they had that hookup in college, QB and receiver, which has worked out really well for them. They could be the story of going from worst to first, having a couple of really bad seasons. I mean, the Bengals were a laughing stock. Then they got Joe Burrow. He bedded in, turned that team around, and yeah, I'll give my thoughts on it later. But he's really impressed me this year with the dynamics between him and Jamar Chase. Obviously, there are other pieces in there. The defense is really good. The rest of the offense is really good. But 10-7 doesn't tell the whole story, I don't think.
No, and part of that 7 are losses to teams like the Chicago Bears. So let's not pretend that the Cincinnati Bengals have been a great team all year. They've definitely had their ups and downs. There were points at which they were not performing at all, and really looked like they were heading to, at best, a 500 season. But you're right. The big difference is Joe Burrow. He is the rookie sensation that went down with injury in 2020. Came back, hasn't suffered from that knee injury that kept him out for the rest of the 2020 season. The guy's cool. Nickname Joey Burrow aside, he's cool as ice. And as long as they can keep him healthy and keep the tools around him, then he will carry that team forward. They do need to improve the offensive line.
Yeah, slightly. And maybe that's where holes get picked this coming weekend.
It might be, but we will get to that.
Yeah,
we've got one more team left to discuss before we go all in on the Super Bowl.
We do, and they are our NFC champions, the LA Rams. Interesting. Not a terrible adjusted record last season. 11-6, and this year 12-5. So both teams going into this weekend were number 4 seeds in the playoffs. First time that's happened in a long time. But yeah, neither team, Bengals, Rams, had a stellar record. Where did it go right and wrong for the Rams?
When you look at the record, I think the bigger question is, where did it go wrong? Because they were a good team from the start. And you look at their November and that slump that they went into. Still to this day, I don't really know what entirely went wrong. But you look at Matt Stafford and his numbers, and that was the period in which he threw a ton of interceptions. He leads the league in interceptions. So I think it's the first time that the person who is leading in interceptions at QB has made the Super Bowl. It shouldn't happen, really. Interceptions tend to mean losses, and it did for November. But they've carried it forwards. They put all the pieces in place. They traded for Von Miller, amongst others. They're in win now mode. They've made it so that they have to win now, because next year is going to be a whole different ball game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, it's barren in the draft. I mean, they don't have any picks until round 4, round 5, something like that.
It's nuts.
Like you said, Von Miller, Odell Beckham Jr., just to name a few of the pickups. You've got the likes of Aaron Donald on defense, stepping his game up again. Matt Stafford came into that team and is the quarterback we thought he was and should have been in Detroit. I'm really glad it came down to these two teams and coming into our next conversation. Yeah, Rams, like you said, win now mode. If it doesn't happen next year.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of dread to think from their point of view and their fan base's point of view, what happens if they do not win the game this Sunday? And we're there. It is the Super Bowl. It's this Sunday. It kicks off at around 11 o'clock UK time, which I haven't done the maths. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 p.m. Eastern in the US.
It's quite nice and early for a change, because usually it's past midnight, isn't it?
No, actually, the Super Bowl is always about an 11 o'clock kickoff.
Wow.
It tends to, because of the halftime show, lasts a bit longer. We're usually done and dusted by about 3 a.m., which is not a time that I like to be awake at. But for the first time in a very long time, the last Super Bowl I stayed up for actually was the Atlanta New England Super Bowl, and I went to bed in the third quarter thinking that Atlanta had it in the bag.
And then he woke up to me gloating.
I woke up to so many messages because everybody knew I'd gone to bed. I was having lots of conversations. Everybody knew I'd gone to bed, and made a point of pointing out that I had erred massively in going to bed in the third quarter. But we digress. I won't do that this time. I'm in for the long haul, no matter the score, on Sunday in the Super Bowl between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, California. We're going to predict it, even though I've already won the rum, just to keep it interesting. And we're going to talk about what we think is really going to come out of this game. Our final 2 minutes of the 2021 NFL season, right here in 2022. Kick us off.
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's the Super Bowl between the two number 4 seeds, with not so great records, as we've just discussed. Joe Burrow, what a fantastic turnaround he's brought to the Bengals with Jamar Chase. That hookup, like I said earlier, has just been phenomenal. Matt Stafford, late on in his career, all of probably the same age as me and you, 35, 36 years old. The guy has probably got this shot. The whole Rams team has probably only got this shot. I don't believe in the Rams. I think going from, like I said, worst to first, and I think the Bengals come out on top.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to get straight in there and say I think the Rams have this. And it's because it means more to them. They are in win now mode.
Mm-hmm.
They've got players on their team who this is going to be their only shot, I think, to win a Super Bowl ring. At least with this team. They would have to go elsewhere to get themselves closer to a Super Bowl ring. Aaron Donald, lifelong Los Angeles, formerly St. Louis Ram. They really need to do it for players like him. And I think now that they've got to the Super Bowl, they've fought so hard to get there. They've beaten some really good teams to get there. And the Bengals have as well, don't get me wrong. But I think it means more to the LA Rams. They're in their home stadium. It's going to bring out a whole new legion of fans in LA for a team that hasn't been in LA very long and is still trying to develop their fan base. Mm-hmm. I believe in the Rams, and I think they win. It's going to be a cracker.
Yeah.
It's going to be
could go to
overtime.
It could go to overtime, and we could be there till like 4 or 5 a.m. watching it.
Oh God, I hope not. I really hope not. Can't handle overtime in this postseason anymore.
No, yeah. Well, the Bengals are, I think, going in as underdogs, and every time they've gone in as underdogs this season, they've won every single game. So they're 8-0 this year, going into games as underdogs.
Fair enough. Yeah. They were expected to beat the Bears and failed to do so. So
yeah.
They
also lost to the New York Jets as well.
Dear me, how is this team in the Super Bowl? Anyway, That brings what has been a long episode of 2 Minute Warning to an end, but it's Super Bowl weekend. You've got to cover every angle on Super Bowl weekend as far as I am concerned. That is our last NFL show for the 2021 season. When we come back in a few weeks, we're going to take a few weeks off before we get into the IFL season. The Indoor Football League season will kick off. We've got a few weeks of that we'll cover for you here. And then the USFL will kick off, and we'll talk about both of them simultaneously.
Yeah.
Got a lot more football to come in 2022. And that's without the draft, free agency, news. I'm sure somebody else will get arrested and put in prison for the rest of their life, because that's how the NFL goes.
I shouldn't say that, and I shouldn't laugh about it.
But it's true, and unfortunately, it's just a fact of life in the NFL right now. But thank you very much to everyone that has joined us, whether you've joined us live for the recording or if you're listening later in podcast form. Truly appreciate you. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Tamsin's won the slots in the Acorns just to finish that. That's perfect timing. Stay tuned to our social media to know when our next episode will be. And that's all I got to say. It's been a hell of a season.
It has. And thank you again. It's our end of our second NFL season on 2 Minute Warning.
Yep. And we will see you very, very soon. So it's goodbye from me. That's where you say goodbye.
Bye, Matt.
Never mind. It's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Matt. We've lost the plot. It's late. I've been drinking. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye from me and from me. See you later. Bye-bye.